We will now call the June 9th meeting of the Curriculum Instruction Committee to order. Good morning. Dr. Cuppett, do we have any public comment?
At this time, we do not.
Very good. We will move on to approving the minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes will stand approved. Ms. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, do either of you have any comments to make at this time? All right, we'll dive right into it. And I just to say that my apologies, I'm going to have to, for public, because you all know this, I'm going to have to get off at 11 o'clock. So if one of the other board members would adjourn the meeting at the appropriate time, that would be appreciated. All right, Dr. Cuppett, we will dive into the Frederick County Virtual School presentation.
All right, thank you, Ms. Yoho, and good morning, everyone. I would like to start with doing some introductions. Michael Watson is the principal at our Frederick County Virtual School, which I do believe is a true gem. Not many school districts across the nation have a program as robust as ours. He's going to talk to you a little bit about kind of the growth that's occurred and some of the systemic problems we've solved as a result of having this program. And I'd also like to introduce Jessica Sauerbrower, if she could hop on camera. Jessica is the assistant principal at the Frederick County Virtual School, so you guys can give her a wave. I do want to point out that Mr. Watson's going to give you some background information related to the program itself. Some of you are new to hearing about the comprehensiveness of the program. And I also want to point out that Mike's presentation is not designed or does not include anything related to the blended virtual program. We're going to cover that this evening at the board meeting. So we'll hold all of that information until this evening. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Watson and say good morning and welcome, Mike.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be with you. Board members, it's nice to be seen. We didn't have the opportunity to present last year, so it's been about 2 years. And so I did want to share some information, kind of historical perspective about the virtual school. And if you have any questions at any time, go ahead and raise your hand, or we can save them till the end of the meeting as well. So to start with the history of the virtual school, we've been in existence really as far back as 2010, when we primarily operated as an evening high school program, and we met out of the Walkersville B building at the time. And we were doing packets of information for students and meeting with their teachers. And then we started dabbling in some online courses. At that time, there was 5 programs. You can see the full-time staff and approximately 50 adjunct teachers. And we were serving, a little under 1,000 students each school year. And you jump to 2020, and we're now considered a blended online program. So we do use comprehensive online courses, but we always have a teacher component, whether that be face-to-face, pre-pandemic, or using Google Meet post-pandemic. We've increased our programs to 7. We've increased our staffing. And you can see that we served last year a little bit over 2,000 students and 1,800 earned credits. So a lot's happened in that 10-year time frame, thanks to the support of our central office team and our Board of Ed. So our instructional model is a little bit different, and I felt the need to kind of clarify this coming out of a year where we've all been doing some kind of virtual. And so we use multiple learning management systems to offer comprehensive blended online courses. And our 2 primary learning management systems are Apex and Buzz. These are national course content providers. So we purchase content from them. We actually purchase seat licenses. And they have, huge teams of developers, curriculum writers who develop online courses that have appropriate accommodations, translations, tools, there's scaffolding, so that kids could, in theory, do them predominantly asynchronously, but we've not felt like that's a good model. We think there needs to be a touch point with teachers. So all of the programs that we offer have some kind of touch point, whether it be weekly or even monthly, with the teacher of record. When the school system implemented Schoology, that provided us an opportunity to start developing some locally courses. For example, our Foundations of Technology course is run through Schoology and some of our other CTE courses. So that's been a really nice improvement and something that I think as a system we'll start to explore moving forward. We do a curriculum review process with FCPS teachers to review courses that we decide to use. We use approximately 3 to 5 teachers who have taught in a traditional classroom to evaluate those courses for content standards, how they align to FCPS standards, and accessibility features. One of the things that I think we're really proud of is making sure that our courses are aligned with FCPS curriculum. And so our teachers over the years have supplemented material, they've removed material from the courses, but we want kids to have as close to an experience that they would if they were taking the course at their home school. You can see we do have required face-to-face and Google Meet sessions to be considered a blended virtual program by the state. And then we also offer mentor support for some of our targeted programs, like our evening high school program, which is primarily a dropout prevention, and our credit recovery program for students who are retaking courses that they previously failed. You can see at the side of the screen there a list of all the programs that we offer. And like Dr. Cuppett said, next year we'll be adding to that with the blended virtual program for high school students. Does anybody have any questions about the instructional model? Okay. So over the years, having the virtual school really has been a blessing because we have been able to serve all of the high schools across the county in very different ways. In 2013, we were able to implement a full credit recovery program to every high school so that they could offer kids courses after their traditional school day to make up credit for a course that they had previously failed. So this really helped keep kids on target for graduation. And all of our 10 high schools are currently running these programs. In 2015, we collaborated with CTC, and we continue to, for their 4th year English and math courses for their full-time students. So CTC uses what they call a learning lunch, where kids meet in a block during their day with mentors who help support them in their online course. And it used to be that teachers actually traveled to CTC and meet with students periodically. Now they're doing all of that over Google Meet, which gives teachers a lot more opportunity to meet with students and have some one-on-one support time with them as well. One of the programs I'm really excited about and proud of is in 2016, we started implementing an English 12 summer session for EL students who were behind on credits for graduation. So we had a group of students where they were going into their 4th year of high school or their final year of high school and still needing 3 English credits. And so we met with Frederick High at the time and we said, how can we solve this? And so we decided to implement English 12 over the summer, and we use a model where we use the online course, but students actually come and physically meet with their teacher on a daily basis. So they're getting support from the teacher, they're getting support from an EL teacher, but they have the flexibility to move at their own pace. So what's really cool is you have students in one room who are at very different paces in the course and kind of moving at their own speed that suits them. So we do have some students in the summer who finish courses early and some students who might just need a little bit more time as well. In 2017, this was really a direct hit of some staffing formulas. If you recall, and I think it was that year that the staffing formula was increased. So our high schools lost staffing across the board. Excuse me, not the staffing formula, the student teacher ratio. And so high schools lost positions. And the following year, the board had some money to kind of re-implement some positions, but it would have equated to like a 0.5 at every high school. And we didn't feel like that would be the best for each school. So we were assigned full-time virtual school teachers, and we developed a program for students to take online courses during a block of their school day in a digital learning lab with a mentor, and then the teachers would travel around to those buildings and meet with students on a periodic basis. That allowed schools that maybe had larger class sizes to reduce some class sizes. So instead of an English 11 class of 35, they could maybe take 5 students who would be interested in a virtual course and do that online in a block of their school day, and then decrease that, English 11 class to a 30 and make it a little bit more manageable. But it also gave kids the flexibility and other options for their English option. And we have core content teachers for the virtual in-school program, including a world language teacher. In 2018, we partnered with Links to offer blended online courses, and they are continuing to use us as an option while they develop some of their own online blended courses. And many of the Links students will use that during their 5th block, so they're getting an additional course option after their school day so that they can take 5 courses as opposed to just 4. And a lot of students will partner with us to take health because they're doing a standards-based or a competency-based model for their fitness credit. So at the high school level, those usually pair up, and this gave kids an option to earn their health credit to do that. In 2020, we started working with middle school students in the Pathway program who are accelerated, and we started offering geometry. And then this past year, we expanded that to offer algebra and geometry. And it's a similar model to the virtual in-school model, where students actually have a block during their school day where they go to work on the course, and they have usually the math specialists at the middle school working with them, facilitating it, answering questions, but then they still have a teacher of record who's doing all the assignments, doing all the grading, communicating with students and families. And that's allowed our middle school students to now take 2 math credits during their 8th grade year. So they can take Algebra 1 in a first semester and then geometry the second semester, so that when they're going to high school, they're already ready to take Algebra 2. So that's been really exciting. We're actually expanding that program next year and have already hired an additional math teacher to meet that need. This year has been an interesting year, to say the least. We've been able to help some schools manage some emergency staffing solutions. For example, we had a teacher at one of our high schools, a math teacher, retire literally like the week that school started. And so it put that school in a bind trying to find teachers to cover their courses. So we were able to use one of our full-time teachers to take on their contemporary math students. And again, we set it up in a virtual in-school model, but it was a unique way to solve a problem at the very last minute. This year, we also worked with the Monocacy Valley Montessori School to offer Spanish to some of their students because they were unable to hire a Spanish teacher at the beginning of the year. This summer, we're going to offer environmental science to EL students who have struggled this year and potentially are going to fail it. So we're going to give that option for them to regain that credit. And some other ways that we've helped schools over the years is if you have a staff member who maybe goes out on leave mid-year or middle of the semester, especially in a world language course, sometimes finding a long-term sub is really difficult. So we've been fortunate that we could use our world language teacher to kind of meet the need there. And then what I'm really excited about in partnering with FCC and the math office is to offer dual enrollment course next year. It'll be the first one that goes through the virtual school. And that's to meet the need of 3 high schools that are unable to offer calculus dual enrollment. So we were able to partner with FCC to provide that option for kids. They'll have to take it after their scheduled school day, but it will be online. So they'll have some flexibility in how they do that course. So we're really excited about that. It opens up a door for possible future dual enrollment courses for students. Just a quick summary of our data. And this is from 2014 to this school year. 2014 was when we integrated with our student information system. So that's really the most accurate data. I could go back further, but I wouldn't really trust some of the data points that we had. So you can see there's been a lot of growth in that time frame. There's been an increase in demand for students to take courses with us for a variety of reasons, from scheduling conflicts because they want to do an internship or work study, or they might want to take an AP course at their home school, so they'll take something else with us to make room for that. You can see at the bottom there that last school year, 37% of the high school graduates had taken at least one course with us at some point in their high school career. And I anticipate that will continue to go up. Our total student enrollment for this year, 2021, on May 17th, it was 2,000 students. We've actually been able to open up a couple of summer options. And so I anticipate that number to be a little bit over 2,200 students this school year. So, you know, we've basically doubled our enrollment over the past 7 years. So this is the part that it's exciting to think about, is especially after this year, is what are the future considerations for virtual school and virtual opportunities for students? And, you know, when this presentation was put together, there were some things happening at the state, at the county level, and we're already kind of meeting some of these needs. So the expansion to increase full-time students, the blended virtual program will allow us to do that. One of the things I'd like to see us explore is some flexible scheduling options to provide a more personalized experience for students so that they don't all have to be at the same time or at the same point in a course as everybody else who might be taking it with them. That would require some additional staffing and some budget for continued growth, but thanks to some ESSER funds, we'll be able to provide additional staffing this year for the blended virtual program. And then looking at additional course options. So, you know, courses that may not be offered in FCPS. You know, there's a lot of things being developed out there. For example, like a fundamentals of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Like there are courses out there like that we haven't had the time to develop here in FCPS. So it'd be really cool to provide students with an opportunity to take courses like that. Or even world language courses. You know, we're only able to offer the world languages for the teachers that we currently have in our system. You know, maybe we need to start exploring other options for students to get access to, you know, Mandarin, Chinese, Arabic, to really help them compete with some of their peers across the state who have the option to take courses. Love to see us expand our dual enrollment options, and then, you know, seeing us kind of really leverage the capacity of Schoology, and maybe even, you know, consider hiring digital designers to help us kind of develop our own online courses. I think Schoology, when we first, you know, started using that as a system, it was designed for blended programs where students are with their teacher, but it does have the capabilities to develop full-blown courses where students can move at their own pace with little instruction needed from the teacher. And so I'd like to see us explore some of those options. As for next year, we've already started building out some more courses so that we can provide better opportunities for students based on their needs. These are courses that we've been reviewing and developing over the past year to be able to offer students, and that's an Algebra 1A and 1B option, Calculus 3 and dual enrollment, the Introduction to Transitional Algebra. That's a really important course for students transitioning between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. And to kind of have a more progressive math course each year of their high school experience. And then we've also added Principles of Finance and Accounting. And the one that I didn't put on here, we will have Introduction to Marketing too. And what's important about those two is they allow us to have a business completer for students. So it provides another completer option through the virtual school that we previously didn't have. Before that, we only had world language and work study that students could do through us. So that opens the door for more opportunities for students to meet some of their needs. And then the ongoing course purchase and development in response to systemic needs. Really, that list of courses there is kind of hearing from students, counselors about what they need and the options for students. So just continuing to hear from stakeholders about what we need to continue to develop and provide those options for kids. Last couple slides are my favorite part, kind of shows the partnership. I'm fortunate that I get to work with a lot of really good staff members across the county. You can see there from Jack Newkirk, the CTC assistant principal, and the work that we've done to allow students that are full-time CT students to get options to their fourth year math and English. Larry Steinley, the supervisor of EL, looking at the things that we've done over the years to support EL students, especially during the summer, to try to keep them on pace with graduation, keep them engaged in school. Stacy Sisler, really a big part of us partnering with SCC to offer this dual enrollment course for next year. Without her and her team's work at central office and the support of George and Kevin, like this wouldn't be an option. So it's just a really good example of everybody working together to solve a scheduling problem for 3 high schools that wouldn't have this opportunity for these students. And the last one's my favorite. This is one of our full-time students. Nidoria has been one of our model students in our evening high school program. She started with us approximately 2.5 years ago, just taking a course in the summer, but quickly realized that this was a better learning model for her based on her needs and her schedule and her life. And so it's really exciting to see her on here. She was in our digital learning lab, coming here on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings to get support from a mentor. And she will be graduating this summer. And so she has been just an excellent model of a student who can take, multiple online courses and balance her daytime schedule, being a parent, and finishing her education. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't finish with someone just kind of remind us of the purpose of why we do this. This is really the essence of how the virtual school started, was providing these types of opportunities for students. And then it grew into providing just alternative options for kids who want to take additional courses to their traditional high school. And that is all I have. So I know I talk pretty fast. Any questions that you have for me regarding our programs, the students we serve?
Yeah, I'll jump in quick here. 2 comments and then a couple of questions. Of course, I forgot one of my comments. Oh, there's a lot of competition out there, for this kind of thing. My husband keeps saying teachers are putting themselves out of business, and I say never. And so I love that we're bringing this in as part of the school system, helping students. I saw it through links and other things where we're trying to meet the needs of the students. We've seen it through the pandemic. So I think this is great. I did forget my other comments. So my 2 questions. How long have you been with the program? What's your background?
Oh, great question. So this is my first year as the principal at the virtual school. I was here previously 7 years. My title was the coordinator at the virtual school. So this is my 8th year here. Before that, I was an assistant principal at Middletown High School and Frederick High School. And I was a middle school science teacher here at SCPS. So this is my 20th year in education, all 20 years at Frederick County Public Schools.
Very good. Was Stacy Adamak the previous principal?
Stacy was my predecessor, and when she retired, I was fortunate enough to take over.
Very good. My other question, I know my other comment. I think one of my former 4th grade students was in that Calculus 3 because her mother contacted me about Oakdale. She really wanted it at Oakdale. So anyway, but serving the needs of the kids. And I just think Calculus 3, is that even a thing? That seems like so far out there, but that's just me. My other question is, I see the Academy of Fine Arts. I talked to one student at their open house pre-pandemic, and I know she was taking some courses. I think she was from Catoctin, and I think her English maybe was through the virtual school so she could fit in her schedule. I didn't see AFA included. Do you know how many students from there might be part of the program?
No, you know what, Ms. Yoho, I do not know how many students are there from AFA. That is something that we don't actually track.
Okay.
But it's something I could probably find out if that's a detail you'd like to know. CTC, I know just because those kids are at CTC full time. So for AFA, they have the opportunity where if they're at TJ for half the day, then they can either go back to their home school or take additional courses with us. And it could be they're taking a virtual school course at Catoctin, or they could be taking a virtual school course in the evening with us as well.
Okay.
But you bring up a good point. So we're able to serve those students because their schedule now becomes really conflicted with that set AFA schedule, that it leaves very little room for some of the other courses they have. And their high school might not offer it during the time that they need it. IB students are very similar. We get a lot of students from IB who are taking some of like their health and fitness or their financial lit credit through us as well. So So yeah, it meets the needs of those students. If that's a number you'd like to see, I could certainly work on getting that for you.
I don't know that. I was just curious. Don't take up any particular time, but if you happen to be looking at data and say, oh, that student, that's it, I'm just curious of how many students are taking advantage of that. But as long as all of our students know it's an option, I think that's great. Mr. J, Sue, do you have any questions?
I do. I'll let Sue go first, though.
Okay, well, thanks, Mr. J. I was going to let you go first. Aren't we so polite to each other? Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was excellent, and I just really appreciate the fact that we're delivering learning opportunities to the students in FCPS and formats that they need and desire. And I think that growth is going to continue. And my question is on the dual enrollment. I guess based on my understanding, it has historically been, an FCPS got in the home school delivering, the dual enrollment course. But with this idea of Calc 3 maybe being delivered online, what is going to happen and what kind of planning have we done? Because I do think we could see some explosive growth in, I don't want to call them niche courses, but just lower enrollment courses that students may want to take. Will they be housed in virtual school, or are they going to be housed in their high schools?
When you're asking, will they be housed, are you talking about the course, the teacher? Help me clarify that question.
Well, really all of that. Like, how much? Let's just say, for example, Arabic. All right. So if we wanted to offer Arabic to our students, I don't even know if even in potentially middle school, but let's just say high school, and we don't have enough enrollment at a particular school to offer that. And we wanted to say, for example, have that be a dual enrollment course. Is that something where it wouldn't, where I would perceive that we wouldn't have, I don't know, a course where we might have maybe 30 students across FCPS that would desire a course? How would that work? Would we use potentially an FCC instructor or some online course that is already there and have it moderated by an FCPS instructor? Like, explain to me how we're going to continue to grow that, where we can serve educational needs of students, but not on a quantity scale, but on the vertical scale, where it's those more focused courses.
Yeah, good question, Ms. Johnson. So, first, any dual enrollment course that we're going to offer has to be a dual enrollment course. There has to be the partnership with FCC that course can be considered for dual enrollment. And then, FCC has some requirements for teacher experience to be able to teach those courses. So the challenge we come into, in addition to some schools having low numbers maybe for a specific course, like Calculus 3, for example, if you only have 8 students at one school, like that might not be able to be offered depending on, the scheduling for my school. So that's where we took advantage of the online format, that we can now serve multiple buildings that might only have, a handful of kids who want to take that course. What we did is we went out and looked for who are the certified staff in Frederick County Public Schools to teach that course. Like, who do we have that could actually, facilitate this for students? And then we reached out to them. So we're going to use an FCPS teacher. And I think that's always our goal, is to first start with an FCPS teacher and see if they have the qualifications to teach the course. But the online format allows us to then, that one teacher who maybe is at Tuscarora, she now has the ability to, because it's online, teach kids at Oakdale, teach kids at Brunswick High, all at the same time using Google Meet and an online course to help them be successful. I think where we're going to start exploring as a system, and maybe Dr. Cuppet would chime in on this, is, do we have the flexibility now to have a teacher that's during their block of their school day, they're teaching kids at other schools in the county? And I know we started to dabble into that a little bit this school year to meet some needs too. So is that answering your question?
Yes, and the fact that you'll always search for an FCPS qualified instructor first. And then I didn't know if there was going to be room for potentially like an FCC adjunct faculty member to potentially, do they have to be employed by FCPS to teach dual enrollment? I guess that's my other question.
Well, so there's two options, and it's either using an FCPS teacher or using an FCC teacher. And so we've had conversations with FCC about that. It then becomes, kind of like who's paying the teacher. Like, so we've initiated the conversations. We haven't had the need to use an FCC teacher just yet. That would be the challenge for a course like Arabic is, do we have an FCPS teacher who's certified to teach that world language? Or in the future, are we comfortable using a Maryland certified teacher that might not be an FCPS to meet that demand for that? And it would have to be after the school day probably for most students to take that. But I think some kids would like that option.
Yeah, if I could just tack on to what Mike has shared there are actually some districts here in Maryland who are actually working across multiple school districts to create some virtual connections. So think about some of our smaller districts here in the state of Maryland. I think one thing we've learned from the pandemic is there's lots of different ways to do things now that we've learned have worked effectively. So it's not inconceivable to think that a teacher may not necessarily be an FCPS teacher, but rather a teacher could be for one district teaching students in both schools, both school districts. We haven't explored that directly yet. And to Mike's earlier point about, say, for instance, the Arabic, I'm pretty confident we don't have anybody in the district right now certified to teach that. And so could we find a course that ultimately we certainly work with not only board approval here for how we do business, but the state approval as well. Could we find a situation where we could bring somebody in with some expertise that doesn't exist in-house and meet the needs of, even 30 students in the district who want to explore that? So when Mike says we're exploring options, it's a lot of, well, what do you think about this? Let's go through. Will this work procedurally? Will it work financially? Will it work with staffing? Will it work with our digital systems? And the process of adding a course, although Mike presented a lot of stuff that makes it look like it was easy, a lot of this takes a lot of time and energy to kind of sort out. So we're going to slowly explore the different options based on what we think demand out there is for students. And I appreciate that Mike shared that we solved a lot of systemic challenges as a result of using this option, which is way more flexible than a traditional high school staffing. So that's kind of where we are with the process. As we come out of the pandemic, we'll continue to look at what options are going to help our students and our teachers.
And can I just follow up with that? How many other districts have a virtual school option like FCPS?
I don't know off the top of my head. Mike, is that something we could find out?
Yeah. So to the depth that we offer, there's probably Baltimore County had a comparable before the pandemic. Every county has some kind of option, and MSDE even provides online courses that each county has access to using a Maryland certified teacher. We've never had to go that route because we've been able to offer our students in-house things. So I would say, especially now, Mrs. Johnson, every school system is probably having some kind of blended virtual program moving forward or online option. Kevin mentioned some of the Eastern Shore schools have formed a consortium where they're all working together to have access to online courses. So I'd be pretty confident in saying that, like, at this point, every school system has it. It's just how big is it and how many students are they serving?
Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is my last comment on there. Especially with the strong leadership that we have here in FCPS, I would just offer, like, has there been any thought given to FCPS continuing to stay on the cusp of the leading edge there, and us offering programs and courses out to other districts? Not that I want to create more work for you, but to stay on that leading edge.
I think one of the challenges we'd have to figure out, and I think this is, I don't have a lot of details on the consortium. I'm sure we'll learn that over the coming year through our associate superintendent meeting, which is the state level meeting that I attend. I'm almost certain they're going to report back to us. Part of this all lands on funding, right? So if we're teaching, let's say we combined with, we did some work with Washington County Public Schools. Well, if it's our staffing that's paying to have those students come in, is there a fee transfer that occurs? We've not explored that. We don't know what that would look like. Sometimes that can be done in kind, meaning they have a teacher that teach some of our kids and we have a teacher that teach some of those. We've just not explored that cross-district work yet because we've been able to really resolve anything that we need to do in-house. But I know that we're a collaborative district. If a district were to reach out and say, hey, could we explore this? I'm pretty sure FCPS would engage in that conversation and be happy to.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. J, for your patience and letting me go first.
My pleasure. I want to thank everybody for presenting today. Mr. Watson, congrats to you for taking the helm of virtual school. I know you were given it in good hands. Stacey Adamek was an excellent administrator. She actually was my administrator for science. I think yours as well for taking on that tablet virtual school. She did with a lot of passion, so I'm glad to see that continue on with you. Wow, a lot of thoughts here. First of all, welcome to the future, everybody. As Karen said earlier, I don't think we're in any way taking ourselves out of the equation. I think we're just actually adapting to the needs and what needs to happen for our students. So I'm really happy to have that happen. SCP has actually been a leader in that. And so I will mention that out, like Sue mentioned there, that we have been a leader in that for some time. When the pandemic occurred, CPS actually already had students who were not only in virtual school, but students who actually had technology in their hands to begin online classes. So kudos to us for that. I had some questions. So I actually have a student who actually is engaged in virtual school at the current time. My son is taking Algebra 2 in middle school with the program. And it's been a great option because I know years ago we didn't have that option for students in middle school. That's been great. I just had some questions in terms of like thoughts on things we can ask our providers. So I know that we have the meet session like I think twice a week. I think meets with the teacher. But what happens is during the actual activity, I don't see that there are examples worked out of the problems. Like the provider, it's all static. It's all reading. It's all, and then like there's some practice quizzes, but there's no actual. Here's how we work this problem. This example of working out in video form. So when we could ask a provider to provide that, we could do it ourselves. We could provide workshop pay for that. I'm not sure, but I think that would be a great addition to all of our courses, especially where you have math and comp sci, where there's some kind of example worked out for the kids in the actual content. And then a question I had about grading. For the policy creation of these systems, are we going with the provider's grading standard, or are we able to impose HTTPS content policy on those? Because right now my son's working with the program. He's had an 89 for the longest time. He's been doing like 90s and 100s and 90s and 100s, and he still has 89. It won't move. So I'm wondering, like, is there? He's fighting for the A, but God bless him, he'll be fine with the B. But the thing is, maybe think. Are we running with the content providers policy on grading, or are we able to supplant that and put our policy on that? I was just curious about that.
Great question, Mr. Johnson. Mr. J. So no, we're able to implement our grading policies. So there is flexibility in like if things are weighted. I mean, we currently use just a total point system. And so then depending on the nature of the assignments, like they might have an extra weight because of the point value that they have. So, and I have to start thinking about that, because as a system, as we start thinking about standards-based learning, I need to think about how does that fit in with our current model, and how are we going to track, students meeting each individual standard once we start to kind of designate those. So that's something that we're constantly thinking about, and we're pushing even our providers when we're having our meetings with them. Like, we're kind of driving, like, here's what we need to see from you for us to continue to be a viable option. Otherwise, we need to go look at other providers, or we need to start developing our own in-house courses to better meet our student or our district needs. So great things. And I think that's going to be changing over the next, the course of the next year to 2 to 3 years, as we start, like I said, venturing into standards-based learning. It's not only going to be a challenge for us at each school, it's going to be a challenge at the virtual school too, but we're going to have to adapt. Our goal is to always provide, like I said, as close to an experience that students would get if they took the course at their home school. I think when, I don't know how much of the course you've seen with your son, like, there are times for students to do practice problems. There's also manipulatives built into the course, but that's also where I think the teacher really comes into play, and having either, before the pandemic, the teacher would actually be traveling to buildings. So your son would have been in a class, and the teacher would actually be able to come there and do demonstrations and work things out and walk them through those steps. And then, this year, we're trying to do that in a Google format. And sometimes that's effective, but sometimes it's not as effective. So I think that's where we continue to lean on some professional learning with our staff to improve in those areas and make that a better experience for students.
Well, I feel like the program is done really well. I think Ms. Lancaster, his teacher, actually Lancaster, has done a great job with him and her other students. I was just looking at ways we can add on to it. And in that spirit, I have a question for you. Do you believe Schoology going forward is going to be our, one thing I have concern about whenever I currently use Canvas, and Canvas I think is a great tool. And one thing about Canvas I like about it is because colleges use Canvas. So our kids go from Canvas to so most colleges using Canvas. They're going from a tool that they know when they're working with their colleges. And that's that, some colleges use Blackboard, so there's no guarantee on that. But my thoughts are when we start looking at creating our own content, how are we able to safeguard its creation? Because sometimes you'll have these accessible files that only work on one system. So we put all this work into Schoology, and it all of a sudden doesn't meet our needs anymore, and we can't really transfer the work over to the platform. How are we looking at being nimble in that regard?
So yeah, that's interesting. So we actually, before Schoology, the virtual school actually used Canvas for some of our, again, kind of homegrown courses. And then when we started using Schoology, we were able to actually copy courses from Canvas or import information or coursework over there. So there is a process that can be done through that. It's not always clean, and we have to then go do some touch-up stuff afterwards. And that's where, when I mentioned digital designers, I think this is where, if that's the route we want to go as a system, you need people who are really trained and have the expertise, not only in content, but then delivering the content. And one of the things that, from my frustration as kind of a learner that I've seen sometimes when I've taken courses is when it links you somewhere outside of your course. Yeah. The course that your son's using, everything's embedded in the course. It's all housed there. It's not taking them to some other website where maybe the link no longer works or the information is not there. Or now they're having to navigate multiple windows. Well, how do I get back to my actual course? So those are things that I think about when we start designing courses. We've got to really think strategically about the student as a user of the course. And so we need to try to kind of keep everything centralized in that course. I do think Schoology, I think it's just as good as Canvas. I think when we started the pandemic, the idea of Schoology, but then the virtual school uses these 2 other learning management systems. Is that too much for kids to handle? And you bring up a good point. Wherever they go after high school, whether it's college, straight into business, they're going to probably have to navigate another learning management system. Yeah. And so I think if we teach kids how to navigate them, then regardless of the learning management system, they're going to have the skills and equipment to do that. But I think Schoology, I think if we as a system decided we wanted to kind of go that direction, I think Schoology is a viable option. I think we just need to think about the structure of how we put it together. And we were forced to have some of those conversations this school year is, how does each teacher like organize their folders so that it's easy and makes sense for a student to go and get information. So it's little things like that that make it kind of intuitive for students to access it. And because the biggest thing is when a kid hits a roadblock and there's not a teacher there, how are we helping them get past that roadblock? We don't want them shutting down and walking away from the course. We want to have it so that they know they have the skills or they know how to get the support to keep moving forward.
For their perseverance.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And I had one more question. I love the idea on the Bitcoin thing, by the way. But I had a question about, you mentioned dual enrollment. I think that's a wonderful option we have with the system. You mentioned that students who take dual enrollment will have to do it after their school day. Is there a reason why that couldn't happen during the school day, like where they would have math, have that happen in that spot?
Yeah, let me clarify that statement. So the Calc 3 option we're having to do after the school day, and it's mainly because we're using an SCPS teacher who's already contracted to teach from 7:30 to 2:15. So the only way to do that would be to provide it after school, unless maybe somewhere down the road, or maybe there's a school that has an open block where a teacher, but the odds of that are very slim, at least right now with staffing. But if a teacher did in theory have an open block, could we offer the dual enrollment block 3, and she has kids in 3 other schools that are sitting in a digital learning lab working on that course with her? But again, I think we're trying to avoid concurrent teaching. So so I think there are options for during the school day. We just have to explore like what availability our staff have at each school. So.
And I think that while concurrent teaching has gotten a bad rap in so much, but I think we have to be open to the future, because future is now, and there are times when that's going to be something a best tool for us. So I don't think we ever throw away tools. It may not want to use a shovel for everything, but there's a day you can use a shovel. So I think concurrent teaching has a place that might need to be turned on at certain times. But I thank you for that explanation. That was excellent. I want to thank you for the work you do. Your students are, in the story you shared of Nadia? It's just one of, I'm sure, thousands of kids you've helped become more flexible. I love hearing that word several times today. Flexible. You have to be able to meet the kids where they are. This world is changing. And one thing I'm very big on, that we actually allow our kids to leave us with being able to take care of themselves. There are a lot of kids who leave us, and once they leave us, they're the sole provider. And this flexible option gives them chances to set themselves up for success before they leave us. So I think this is just a wonderful tool for more reasons than one. Either our struggling learners, or advanced learners, or learners who need more time. I applaud your work you're doing, and thank you very much.
No, thank you. And we couldn't do the virtual school today would not be what it is without some of the leadership at our central office, but with also our board of ed. I mean, you guys have been visionary. You've supported us. You've allowed us to have full-time teachers before it was a common thing to have full-time teachers. So we wouldn't be where we're at today or have some of these options and structures in place if it wasn't for, everybody from central office to the board up. It really is a team effort. So I appreciate your support. I really do.
If I could jump in real quick, Sue, Mount Airy is in 4 counties, and this goes, maybe 30 years ago, they talked about a high school between Carroll County and Frederick County, because the dividing line is right down Main Street of Mount Airy, and curriculum, money, they never worked it out. I've never heard it brought up again. Eastern Shore had a need they pulled together with their community college. So, maybe it's time to start looking at some of those sort of options again, but just historically. And I was just going to say, we have Miss Sauerbauer here, don't we? We didn't really get to talk to her. If she wanted to real quick say something about how much she loves being with the virtual school.
Well, you nailed it. I do love being with the virtual school. I feel like I hit the lottery. When I was a much younger teacher, I actually had the opportunity and pleasure to teach Fitness for Life in the Evening High program. And that was back in the day we were using packets and the strapped heart rate monitors, and just seeing its growth since I've been in the system. I'm 1 year behind Mike. This is year 19 for me. I could not be happier to be here and to come full circle, having been an administrator at TJ and Frederick High and Tuscarora, and then Walkersville Middle, and to be here where I can use all those skills from both levels is just, this is a dream come true. So could not be happier to have come on in October. And I'm so glad that I get to work with Mike. I've known him and his wife for years. So it just feels like a perfect convergence. So seeing what has happened with this program over the last 15 years as a spectator looking in has been wonderful. And as Mike said, I will echo, the support from central office and the board is how we are where we are today, and it's how we're going to grow in the future. So I could not be more excited to be here at this time, where, as Mr. Johnson said, this is the future, and we are poised better than a lot of other counties to fully seize on all these opportunities. So I'm excited. I came in at the perfect time. So thank you, and thank you for promoting me to this position.
We just stamped the, yes, Dr. Albin, good moves. Thank you. And I think we're going to move on to District Committee on Assessment. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll hear from you again in the future. And I've got about 9 minutes, and so I'm going to throw out my, not question so much as point. The one thing we're hearing from various people, where a lot of people were very happy that state assessments were postponed, other people saw it as a way for us to escape accountability. And so the fact that, we're looking at District Committee on Assessment, I'm sure you all are aware of that minor opinion out there. It's not heard a lot, but I hear it now and then, and from a former school board member, and I had to say, no, we are assessing. So, that would be the only thing I would say, that just know that people are always, as you are well aware, looking for accountability, and that we are providing that. So thank you, and I'll listen to the beginning, and then I'll hop off. Take it away, Dr. Cuppett.
Yeah, so thank you, Karen. I think that's an important consideration, that's not only a local conversation, that's a national conversation about where is the balance between knowing what kids can know and do, and then being accountable for those results, whether it's at a state, a local, or a national level. So we have heard a little bit of that, but I think with the presentation you'll see today, I think this is a pretty balanced approach. So I know that Mr. Watson at one point mentioned Kevin, that would be me, and George in the curriculum department, that is Dr. George Seaton. If he could wave and introduce to say hello there. Dr. Seaton is the director in curriculum instruction and innovation. And joining him is Jen Bingman, who's the director of system accountability and school improvement. And they're going to talk about the District Committee on Assessment. Just a reminder, I think there's some brief history in here that this was something that Frederick County actually developed knowing that the legislation was coming. And so we've had probably one of the longer running DCAs. And originally it was myself and Dr. Alavito that headed up that group. And we've now handed it off to Dr. Seaton and Dr. Bingman, Jen Bingman. And well, I'm still encouraging you to do that, Jen, but to Jen Bingman. So it's in great hands. So I'll turn it over to them, and I'm going to control the slideshow.
Thanks, Dr. Cuppett, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you, Ms. Yoho, for sharing your perspective. We always want to hear and make sure that we are aware of what the context of what people are saying. And absolutely, as Dr. Cuppett said, we're all about making sure that we're monitoring students and aware of how students are performing. So thanks again. So we already have the intro. Dr. Cuppett went over that really well. So we'll just kind of jump right into the presentation. And so like he said, the District Committee on Assessment really was born knowing that the Senate Bill 452 was coming, the More Teaching, Less Testing Act of 2017. And part of that Senate Bill 452, there was a requirement that each local school system created a District Committee on Assessment. The purpose of the District Committee on Assessment was multiple layers. The first one being to make sure that across the system that census testing did not go above 2.2% of the instructional hours devoted for assessments. And that goes for federal, state, and locally mandated assessments. The only difference to that would be at 8th grade, where it could go up to 2.3%. Now, as a district committee on assessment, the cap could go above the 2.2% or 2.3% for 8th grade if there was an agreement with the local bargaining unit. Unfortunately, in CPS, we've never gone above the percentages of 2.2 and 2.3. We very much take a critical eye in looking at our assessment and what is required and making sure that it really does satisfy the needs of why we would give that assessment. So we stay very closely aligned to that. Yep, if you go to the next slide. Now, what does not go into that 2.2% are teacher-developed assessments. So teachers develop all kinds of assessment. They formally assess students all the time, and we wholeheartedly encourage teachers to utilize that formative assessment to design their instruction. But none of those go into that when we calculate the 2.2% or 2.3% at the 8th grade level. In addition, advanced placement and international baccalaureate also do not go into that 2.2%. So the role of the committee is really to review all of our census administered assessments, and we review to determine what is the purpose of the assessment. We want to make sure that the purpose is clear and it's going to be helpful for teachers, making sure that we don't have redundancy. We don't want to give the same assessment and get similar results because there would be no purpose in that. So we want to make sure that the assessment is unique for the purpose of what we are doing or administering it. That the time required is reasonable and not taking an enormous amount of the instructional time, and that the timeliness of the results. We want to make sure that teachers get the results in their hands so that they can use it to design their instruction and have an impact in student learning. And lastly, also, we want to make sure that the feedback that students get and the educators receive really do inform the instructional practices and designing of those instructional practices. So we want to make sure that the feedback that is gathered from it very much hits what the need is.
The District Committee for Assessment is a biennial process where we work with the bargaining unit to create rubrics and to evaluate assessments, discuss the time required for local assessments, and review the purpose of each assessment. And the members of that committee are school administrators, leadership, the FCTA, the Frederick County Teachers Association, teachers. We started this process where we reviewed the purpose. That is, we actually go back to the legislation and make sure we're meeting the letter of the law. We reviewed our rubrics, and then we began to follow the process. Typically, the rubrics are reviewed with teachers as part of the summer curriculum writing workshop process. Then curriculum specialists bring those findings back to the committee and present those. And then the last step is that we present this information to you, members of the board. We've included in your packet a sample rubric. Jen will take you through an actual rubric that we used in a few moments, but just wanted to have that there for you for reference purposes. In the content areas that are covered, we cover COGAT, which is Cognitive Abilities Test, and DIBELS, and then the full spectrum of elementary content offerings. And then the next slide, we do the performance series. And then again, the full gamut of secondary course content offerings in our school system.
So like Dr. Seaton said, we wanted to share with you a sample rubric because what he went over are all the content areas in every assessment that is administered census. Each team reviews all of those assessments based on the rubric as he just shared. But this is one that is given for our COGAT abilities assessment, and it's given to our second grade students as part of our universal screening for gifted and talented, as well as it provides valuable information for teachers about students' abilities and helps them to identify strengths and weaknesses for students to be able to identify and support students. But what we wanted you to see from this completed rubric is what it looks like. And again, this is brought forward by all curriculum specialists for every assessment that is administered for census administration for all students. And so you'll notice that for each one of the categories, the evaluation is meets, partially meets, or does not meet. And you'll notice for the first one, for purpose, it meets, but the team also gave some particular notes for the District Committee on Assessment to consider, so that there were important points that we wanted to talk about as a District Committee on Assessment, and then also discuss if there are action steps that we wanted to take. So you can see there as an example for what, even though it meets, there are some important notes and action steps to follow up. You'll notice in the second row, in the very bottom on the slide 11, as Dr. Coppett has up, there is one that does not meet. And that did not surprise us when the District Committee on Assessment reviewed that, because we would anticipate the cognitive abilities assessment is not giving us standards information. But it was important for the District Committee on Assessment to understand that although that's part of the rubric, it's not what our COGAT is actually, we're giving it to the students to find out. So that was also something that we talked about and considered. And then here you just see 3 more areas within the rubric. All 3 of those areas met, but you'll notice that the committee, when they reviewed it, really pulled out particular parts of the rubric to make sure that there were notes that really explained and helped people to understand how the assessment really is meeting the requirements of the rubric, because we really want to make sure that we take this time to take the opportunity to really look at our assessments and make sure that it really is satisfying the rubric requirements. And then if you go to the last page, the next slide, 13, what you'll notice is that overall, it will tell you as the evaluation whether we're going to continue the assessment, modify, discontinue, or replace the assessment. And for the COGAT assessment, we certainly want to continue it, but there were some recommended modifications, which were simply that we wanted to make sure that we provide professional learning, because this assessment does give powerful information for teachers, and we want to make sure that the teachers have that information to understand what that data means and how it can be utilized to support groupings at the elementary level. And then we also talked about the need for wanting to move it up to earlier in the school year in September, because that information can be helpful for teachers when they're grouping students throughout the year. So if we wait till later in the year, then more time has passed, and we want the instructional process to really have maximize the use of it. So that's just a sample rubric. And again, as Dr. Seaton went over, we go over that for all assessments for all curricular areas.
So for the coming school year, we have 2 things on our radar that we're paying close attention to, and that is changes in the state assessment calendar, or what those assessments may be, and then how that might interact with our local assessment calendar. That pretty much finishes up our presentation. Questions?
No, I didn't have any questions. That's pretty thorough. So I'm just waiting for implementation. I guess when that happens, I'll have questions, but it was very, very, very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, any questions?
I appreciate the presentation, and do like the way that we're approaching local assessment. I mean, I think there's a lot we can do on our own to determine what our students know, and there's a lot of I'm trying to articulate myself here. There's a lot of mechanisms in which we can measure what students know. So I personally not a huge fan of standardized testing, and I like as a teacher myself that I like the idea of being able to let my colleagues and my administration know what I think my students understand. So I think, yeah, I think we're on the right track. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you all. And I do want to thank Dr. Seaton and Ms. Bingman for taking the lead with this committee. I think the intent of the legislature was to make sure that teachers were more heavily involved with assessment. And we've always had them involved through our summer curriculum workshops, but this has formalized that process. And Dr. Seaton's last slide there, where he pointed that we are still waiting for a lot of information from the state. You've heard that for the last 16 months about everything from health and safety to curriculum to virtual programming, and assessments is certainly going to be a place that we're waiting to hear more details. And we're really going to be looking at, once those pieces from the state fall in, then how do we adjust our local assessment framework to get our jobs down, but not stack up kids with a lot of assessments in the same time period. That's something we've been able, I think, to avoid in the last couple of years as a result of this committee's work. So we're looking forward to hopefully being successful at that again this year. Ms. Johnson, the next agenda item is really just the calendar that we look at at the end of every meeting. And I was going to request of the board members here that we do one switch, which was to bring forward from later in the calendar information around Schoology, our digital ecosystem, and personalized learning, and switch that with English language arts. Just for the work that we're doing, that'll actually be more timely. And will not require us to provide any additional updates if we just switch those. Does that seem okay for you all?
So that would mean the November 10th slot for Schoology would then go into August 4th, and August 4th would go to November 10th?
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly what we'd like to do.
Yeah, well, I think that's completely appropriate given that the digital ecosystem is so vital to our opening.
Yeah, there's definitely some things that we'd like to share with you that are more timely. Excuse me, from that presentation. This will also give Ms. Ralston a little bit of time coming out of workshops to get some information tied up so that it'll be presented to you all. So that was an easy switch for us, if it's an easy switch for you all.
Okay, Mr. J?
Agreed.
I'll make sure Ms. Yoho is aware of that.
Okay, well, it makes perfect logic.
Okay, all right. So which one of you are going to scissor, paper, rock for closing the meeting?
Well, Sue got the most votes, so she gets only number 2. She was number 1.
Oh, you're so kind. Well, I think it could be any of the, I think we should go by last name. Johnson or Johnson? No, it can't go. Okay, no, I'll does anyone have any other further comments or anything to share for the good of the group?
Not seeing any.
With nothing being meant. Yes, Mr. Cuppet.
Tom Saunders has raised his hand. There's one in every class. All right, Tom.
I just wanted to say thank you to, I would have said same to Karen, but your comments, both of your comments yesterday at the Teacher of the Year celebration were really well received, and just appreciated you all being there. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. I felt embarrassed to admit that I felt like I stumbled and tripped and crawled and, scratched my way across the finish line myself, to then be in the presence of all these teachers who were able to thrive during the pandemic. Just gives true testimony to the quality of and devotion of the staff that we have here. And I think the only other thing I would have mentioned is I know no teacher can do that without the support of their families. And I neglected to mention that, but I know nobody could do those jobs without help from their families. So that's one regret I did not mention is I don't think any of them could be there without the help of their families. But thank you for your kind words, Mr. Saunders.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And thanks again to all our nominees and teachers around the world. Thank you.
Yes. Any other comments? No? Okay, well, hopefully everyone has a great day. With that, no other further comments, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn the curriculum instruction meeting for June 9th.
So moved.
Okay. And all in favor?
Meeting is adjourned, right? Yeah.
All right, then the meeting shall adjourn. You all have a great day. Take care.
All right.